This podcast is brought to you by The Shift.
It's story time!
Hello and welcome back to the Storytime Podcast. My name is Claire. I go by Clisare on the internet. You're not seeing me today because I can't get my webcam to work for some reason. So recording a podcast in lockdown is a nightmare. But I'm joined here by Ace. Ace, would you like to introduce yourself and tell everyone where they can find you on the internet?
Hello, my name is Ace, or I go by Ink on the internet. I find me on Magical World of the Internet on Get in the Box on Instagram, Trash Pod on Twitter, and Box of Adventures on TikTok and YouTube.
Basically, you're here to tell me about something that I have no idea about personally.
A lot of people don't have an idea about it. And so, like I said, I do YouTube and TikTok, and I just so happen to be a member of the furry fandom, specifically the Irish furry fandom. And when I say that, people also go, huh? What?
Yeah, didn't know there was one.
Yeah. So I am a furry. I'm an Irish furry. Specifically, I do a lot of fursuit work. So I have two characters or personas. And personas is the term when people use to have characters to describe themselves, I guess, or portray themselves in an ideal world, in quotation marks, or like an alternate version of themselves. That's very much for me. I've got two characters. One character is called Ink. I have her on screen here, or for the audio listeners, she is a white and purple dog with big, shiny blue eyes. And she's essentially what I would think is me if I was a purple and white dog. And then I have another suit because I thought it would be a great idea to spend all my inheritance in one go. I have another dog, as you can tell, very original there with the whole design. Called Kyra, and Kyra is white with very neon blue neck collar design. She has sparkly bright pink eyes, again very creative with whole sparkles, and she has about 16 million ear piercings and customizable hair. Kyra is like the alternate version of myself. Like, imagine your 12-year-old self stuck in the emo phase, looking at yourself when you're like 19, being like, mom, not a phase. Kyra is the embodiment of it, not a phase, mom. So
Okay.
They're my characters.
So Kyra, and sorry, what was the name of the first one again?
Ink.
Ink.
So like ink pens or something.
That's so, and so like, yeah, so you have a couple of specific stories to tell me, but I guess I just want to ask a question or two first as a total noob to this scene. How did you get into this?
Long story short, my aunt had me into Pokemon when I was about 5 or 6, very, very young. And from there, it just kind of grew. Like Pokemon, and then became My Little Pony, became Disney, and then I just was like, nah, I'm too cool for this kind of stuff, and just kind of hit the back road for a while. And next thing I know, I was completing my junior cert and getting my first suit the same week. So, I don't know how that worked. It just kind of happened, I guess.
And do your parents, or your friends and family, I suppose, know about this?
My parents do know. My dad just doesn't really care. And my mom is what we would call my handler. So in the furry fandom, there's this term, because obviously when you've got suits on, you can't really see. So your handler is usually like your friend, or in my case, my mother. So I am the coolest kid in the block, who comes along and basically sees for you, which isn't great because as viewers can see, I wear glasses and my mother also has glasses. So between the two of us, we're like two blind mice just in a sea of color.
So it must be hard to wear the glasses inside the head. Do you wear contacts when you're wearing the head?
So I actually can't wear contacts. One of my eyes is too damaged for contacts. But I was very lucky in a sense that when I was making my first suit, like when I was making the character and stuff, I designed her originally with glasses.
Oh, wow.
And Ink's maker, Late Night Life, was very, very, very good to me, and the glasses wearer herself. So there's actually a little dent inside in Ink's head. When I hold her straight like this, you'll see how her face is a bit slanted. So there's little like stages, I guess, within the eyes where my glasses can sit. Like
Oh, wow.
But that's only with Ink, and it's not very common within the fandom, to be honest. But with Kyra, I have to wear my glasses because I'm basically blind without them. A and B, Kyra's eyes are made very differently. Kyra's eyes are completely hard. I could put a knife through them and they would still be like hard. But with Ink, they're like a flimsy thing. So with Kyra, my vision is very, very bad because I was very smart on making the character, and I decided to put a big poop of hair over her eyes. Yay! So I am like a blind mouse in this, but in ink, my vision is pretty good. So it really depends on like your maker, the material, obviously your own eyesight. It's all that kind of taking what you have and then building on it or building around it.
And do you have the full suit or is it just the head?
So for me, what I have is what they would call a partial or a 3/4 partial. So full suit is like top to tail, but top to feet of just all suit. What I have from both characters is I have the head, I have arms, I have paws, and I have tails for both characters. I did have like specially made feet for ink, but they decided they wanted to get eaten by a door lift in Dublin Comic Con.
Oh
So
no.
that didn't happen. Yeah, I was very, very lucky that day that I didn't fall flat on my face.
Okay, so just before you get into your stories, I'm actually going to pause it for a second because actually I've just realized that what I can do here is I can just record myself. It doesn't have to be on a webcam. I swear I wasn't doing this for 3 years. I've just figured that out now. Yeah, so I'll let you get into your story now, but what I just wanted to ask you first, there's so many questions I wanted to ask you. So
Ask away
not only are you like a furry yourself, like you like to dress up in the furry costume. Is it a costume? Is that the right word?
So costume and then fursuit is the specific name, but it does make a difference.
Yes. Okay. So you like to dress up in the fursuit yourself, but then you also host a podcast.
Yeah.
And now this podcast is aimed at the Irish furry community.
So it's aimed at like all furries,
yeah.
but like most of my audience is, strangely enough, I actually have more Zimbabwe listeners than Irish listeners, but you know.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Okay, so my first story, like I said earlier on, my mother is involved in a lot of these. And one of these was I wouldn't say got caught, but definitely got noticed by one of my teachers at a public event while I'm fursuiting with my mother. And I completely blame her for this because she's the one that dragged me into it. So in 2019, this tournament came to my town. It's like this traveling tournament. It's been to other countries. It's been to Sweden and America and things. And it's called the Ironman. And basically, it's like a triathlon event. You know, to be honest with you, it would be, if you described hell to me, I would describe that to you. So my mother was working at that event. And during the second day of the event, the Saturday, they had like a public open day. So the idea was that you can go there, just check out the venue, I guess. And I was like, oh, hang on, this will be great. Now, if I go around in my fursuit, because I've never been public fursuiting before. So I borrowed my mom's volunteer t-shirt and I wore ink and I had like the head, the arms and the paws. And it was all great and fine. We were just walking around. I was with my mom, like I said, mesh head on my head. And I just freeze. And she goes, oh, you're my student, and starts chatting away to me about like last week's homework and all that stuff. And I'm standing there in fursuit like, hi, miss, I'm going to pretend like I don't know who you are. Oh my God, there's children around the place. I not take my head off and break the magic. Side note, breaking the magic is when you take off your fursuit or reveal that you're human in front of children. It's typically like, I wouldn't say frowned upon, but if you do it in a convention setting, it's fine, but like don't do it for children. You know, the whole like make magic for kids, I guess, in a way. And
interesting. Okay.
It's a big thing in the fandom. Like if you're at a furry convention, you take care of yourself at the convention. But if you're out in public dealing with the general public who don't know a lot of furries, you know, you generally try to make it as enjoyable as an experience as possible. So try not to break magic. And I'm there just like, you know, doing my furry thing, and Miss is like chatting away to me, and I try and pretend I don't know her. Now, if anyone has an Irish man, yeah, my mother goes, no, miss, that's my child. Yeah, chatting away, chatting away.
She ratted you out.
Yeah, she ratted, literally. I mean, I would say she dogged me out, but that sounds a bit weirder. And I'm just like, don't know who you are, miss, sorry. And remember, I don't talk in fursuit. I try my best not to reveal who I am.
So I didn't know that. So you don't talk.
No, I don't talk unless I need to talk. Then, you know, if it's an emergency or whatever, or if I find someone I know, or I want to ask a question, or I want to get a photo or whatever, or see something that's really cool, I try my best not to talk. And I'm just like, you can imagine in the hot heat of June in a full fursuit, just.
And is that like, is there any reason for that decision? Like, why do you not talk in the fursuit?
It's not my thing. Some furs do, some furs don't. I think that's really common is, the bird whistles, or like the bird chirpy things.
Oh yeah.
You can put them in your mouth and they make like bird noises. My very first convention back in 2018, I decided I wanted to be cool and I also wanted to suffer. So I put a kazoo in my mouth for the whole day in fursuit. And as I'm walking around, these like kids, they're like, about my height. I'm 5'2". I'm so short. And one child decided to look up when they were like under me and banged the kazoo into my entire teeth.
Oh.
And from that moment on, I knew I was destined to be quiet in fursuit.
Yeah, no more kazoos.
No more kazoos. Little to my knowledge, she had stood beside me and taken a photograph of me in suit. Like, she stood beside me. And obviously my mother must have taken it, or someone that was with her took it. And she pinned the photograph up on the whiteboard for the whole year to see.
Oh, Jesus.
For every student that came into her class for the next like 6-7 months before Corona. It's just like, what's the fursuit, miss? And every time that would happen, she would like spend half the class talking about me, but couldn't name me because she wasn't quite sure. And like, part of me wants to believe that to this day, she's not too sure. Like, it could very well have been my mother just pretending it was me. But I know. And I know she knows, and she knows I know that I've been out.
That seems so weird that she do that.
I am her favorite student. Not to brag, I am her favorite student.
Oh, right. So she's not trying to like upset you. She thinks she's supporting you.
She thinks this is the best thing ever.
Right. Okay. But what is the reaction of like friends and?
So it was a running joke in my friend group for a while that I was a furry before I got my suits, and before like, I hate using the term came out as a furry because that's not the same. But like before, it was very public, the fact that I'm into this kind of stuff. So then when it actually turned out to be true, I was like, how did you suss me out? How did you, where did this come out of? And at the first time, it was very strange. Like, in fairness to one of my friends, Pepper Saucy, she's an artist on Instagram. I absolutely love her stuff. I've adored her stuff, created. And she actually like brought me some Comic-Con for the first time and actually exposed me to all this furry nonsense. So I blame her all the time. I go, you brought me there. You let this happen. You left me unsupervised for like 5 seconds, and here I am. But generally in school, like, no one really cares. Because I have on my Instagram, sometimes I have my face on Instagram, sometimes I don't have my face on Instagram. It depends. Like, it happened to me at the start of 2020, so school, like last year, the start of 5th year. My page got absolutely raged and like rampaged from students in my year who had caught on about love with the furry. So I got featured in a YouTube video, and obviously someone somewhere saw it and linked it, and next thing I knew, I was getting like 200 requests a day for follow requests on Instagram.
Wow.
And yeah, not good. So I'm very public. I show my face on furries. Lots of people don't show it. I obviously give my voice and things. But I was never so scared about being public before. It was like the first time that I had ever had my account on private, because it was kind of scary. Like I said to you off air, like outside the furry, my personal life is very personal and I don't share it a lot. So the fact that like people from my personal life are mixing with that and people from my public life are seeing that, it really freaked me out. So apart from that, it's been very good. It's been well. Like, I don't really show the fact that I'm a furry online, like in my online personal space. But on Instagram, you Google search furry on Ireland and I pop up. So I can't really avoid.
Yeah. And so what, sorry, I'll let you get to your second story now in a second.
You're okay.
I'm just so interested. What made you make the decision to come on a video podcast as yourself, for example?
Well, to be honest, practically wise, it's because at first it's too fucking hot. So, it's too bloody hot in there, to break it down. But I have this big love for radio and entertainment and comedy and just talk to people, I guess. Like I said, I've watched your videos for years. I remember being really sick and watching you, like, this makes me smile. So I just came on because I was like, you know what, my face is on things before. I'm on Twitter as my face, Instagram as my face. You know, you can't really not see me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But practical wise, I wouldn't be able to see the camera, and I'd be too second off because despite how cute they look, they are not cute to get heat stroking. Not part of the plan. But yeah, I've been very lucky that I haven't got heat stroke, but it is very common at furry conventions people get heat
Oh,
stroke.
wow.
So despite what I just said a second ago, I was on RTE and nobody knew it was me. Specifically, RTE News, the More on Dahi show, Pulling with My Parents, and RTE's on YouTube channel. Now, for a bit of context, I go to a lot of conventions before Corona, unfortunately, killed all off. So I would go to conventions, usually Comic-Con, March, which would be the spring edition, and then March. Say that again. Sorry, my brain just like, no, you're not going to work. So despite what I just said a second ago, I was on television and nobody knew it was me. Now, for a bit of context, this was in 2019, so before, you know, the coronavirus pandemic took over everything and cancelled conventions. I went to SpringCon in March, which is in Dublin Comic Con, which is the nickname for the convention that's held in March in Dublin Comic Con Convention Centre. You know, I was on that stage before it was cool. So I was going down the main lobby of this convention centre. If anyone has been to convention centre before, it's like the main floor where like all the zoomy doors, I don't know what they're called, the like rotating doors are called. And in the main floor of that, I was like walking around with a couple of my friends. And these cameramen from RT come over. Now I didn't know they were from RT because A, I don't talk in suit, and B, I can't see anything in suit, especially when all hot and sweaty, and I had no handler. I was relying on other furries who also couldn't see in a dark room. So great plan for disaster there.
Just out of curiosity, which suit were you in?
I was in ink. I was in this one, but ink. This is ink 1.5. Ink went for like fix up last year. Sorry, 2 years ago. Like I think it's 2021. And even though 2020 like felt like a decade, it feels like 5 seconds at the same time.
Yeah.
But I was in ink. I was in this suit. So this is before I got Kyra, my other one. So I was in like the main hall of Comic Con. These cameramen come up to me and they start chatting away to me. They're like, RT covered blah 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 Comic Con. Didn't get really much of it. I was like, okay, great camera, great, fantastic, just pose. So there's I want to say 6 furries. So I'm the very far left, and there's like 5 more. So me and 5 more. And she's like, do a pose, do a thing. And then he like kind of got the camera and he did angles this way, and then he went that way, and he just, you know, got us to do certain poses and certain like things. My English is running out. I can't do the describing words, but he got us to like effort for the camera. And I was like, okay, that's fine, you know, forgetting about it, something to notice. Until I was on the train home, and my grandmother of all people found RTE's Facebook page, because like everything in Ireland, somehow it ends up on Facebook and some Irish family is going to find it, you know.
Ireland loves Facebook.
Always saying it, right? We don't need neighborhood watch like in America, because we have Irish families on Facebook. Like, you know, the guards could retire in the morning and Irish families would know no different. Just saying. But yeah, she found it and said to me and just sent me a question mark. Nothing else, just a question mark. And I opened the video, and here it was, RTE's coverage of Dublin Comic Con. Now, my face wasn't in it, my name wasn't in it, nothing that could identify me except for the suit was in it. And I saw it and I was like, oh, I don't know what this is. And I just kept scrolling.
And so, sorry, she must have recognized the suit then to know it was you, did she? Yeah.
She saw the suit and she must have thought like, oh, is this my grandchild? Is it, you know, whatever. Because I was telling her up the weeks days beforehand that I was going to convention. There was going to be other people there, cosplayers and stuff. Because my brother's really into cosplay and that's this kind of thing. And the two of us are just the two evil forces combined to make this big mess of children. So it's fine. My mother has great conversations of the dinner table about like one of us got with Star Wars, the other got with Star Trek, and she's just like sitting in the middle, like, so you know, it's great. So she sent me on the video, and you know when you get notification and you don't want the notification, it's like a notification you just turn off to see. That was me. Just I don't know what that is. No thanks. No, thank you very much. And just move on with my day. I thought that was the end of it. No. Little do I know, about 2 weeks later, I'm sitting down with my family to watch Goggle Box, and we're sitting down eating our first and ice cream or whatever we're doing. You know, typical Wednesday evening, like, ugh, this week is still going on. And next thing, they're showing the Pulling with My Parents. Now, little did I know, if you don't know what Pulling with Parents is, like, basically kind of like a blind dating telly show, I guess, where your parents go on people's Tinders and try and get people dates.
Yeah, it sounds
Yeah.
awful.
To be honest, it's worse than First Date, and that's saying something, all right? But that's neither here nor there or in between. And we're sitting down, and Pulling with My Parents comes on, and we have these two lads are coming on, they're whatever, they're covering Dublin Comic Con. And I remember in that moment, like, sitting down. I have a dog called Belle, right? And she's a tiny Jack Russell, she's so small. I remember having her on my lap and just shaking because I thought, oh no, the clip from Comic Con is going to be on the telly once again. Oh no. Correct.
Wasn't it?
Yeah, it was on the telly. And the worst thing was, or probably the best thing, my mother didn't recognize the fursuit, didn't recognize the suit. I'm like, I'm on the telly. That's me.
That's
Look,
mad
Mom,
that
I
it was on
made
the
it.
TV. I didn't realize that, like, RT shared footage from news to another program. That's mad.
Yeah. So the funny thing was, it was me, and then they showed like other content, right? They showed they showed other footage they caught from the day. And the funny thing was, I have this friend called Sam. His name is Getsu on Instagram. He makes like these big Fallout costumes. This man has like brains to burn and a bit more. The stuff he makes is just out of this world. The funny thing is, my mother recognized his work that she had never seen before, but didn't recognize my fursuit on the television.
Oh, mammies.
Oh, yeah. I wouldn't even mind. But, like, she can't go upstairs and not see this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that was one of my fun stories, that I was on television and no one knew it was me. And, like, for a couple of days, I get messages being like, did you see Sam on the telly? Did you see? I'm like, yeah. Did you see me? So that was some of my fun stories of being on television and nobody knowing it was me.
And did you mention you had one more?
I have three. So this is my last one. I promise I will stop talking after that, because I find I can talk for Ireland and probably England too if I was given the chance. So speaking of talking, I run my own podcast called Furry Trash. Now, for a bit of context, Furry Trash is seen as like I wouldn't say as a derogatory term or like a hate word. I don't know. It's used by 12-year-olds on TikTok who think they're funny, who want to offend the furry fandom, and it's just like, that's good. You know, be a bit more creative. No, all right.
So you're like reclaiming the term.
Yeah, definitely reclaiming the term. It came to me as a dream, ironically enough, because despite what I do and despite me talking for like 40 minutes, I am really socially shy. I cannot people. It's just new. So I thought, hang on, let's suffer and make a podcast. So I made the podcast in December 2019, and the first episode went live in January 2020. Yay, great timing there. Yeah, you know, ye old fashioned pandemic. And it's so funny because if you listen to the very first one, I'm talking with the UK fairy called Nagasaki, and I'm asking Lucy, which is the human under the suit, talking to her about conventions and what she's looking forward to going. And actually list this whole list of conventions. And I'm pretty sure they all cancelled one after the other in real time. So
Yeah.
I'm just like, that age flawlessly. So yeah, I started the podcast, and to be perfectly honest, I thought I was talking into the void. I genuinely thought that I would be just, you know, who wants to listen to an Irish furry go on for 20 minutes once a week about random stuff that no one really cares about. Yeah, I was wrong. So the podcast blew up very fast over lockdown. To be honest, the lockdown was kind of a blessing in disguise for that sense, because everyone was home and everybody had nothing to do. So they thought, why not? This furry friend's a bit strange. Why not, you know, have a bit of a gander around this stuff? What's the worst that could happen? Anyways, yeah, it didn't stop. In the first month and a half of podcast show, my Twitter, my TikTok, and my Instagram had gained like 3,000 followers between the three of them, so 1,000 followers each. And it just like did this massive drop, and then it did this. So that was great, no mental health there. But over the last year, I got to speak to some of the biggest names of the furry fandom, which to me is like very overwhelming because I can't.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question is who comes on the podcast? It's people who are furries and who, yeah.
So over the last year, I've had so many different people on. I've had people from the UK, people from US, Northern Ireland, basically anywhere and everywhere that's got furries. And specifically the furry fandom, like the show, I guess, isn't well, it's like I describe it as a podcast for furries by furries. Try for that 5 times fast. Doesn't work. The show has had like multiple guests. So I've had cosplayers on in the past who just so happen to be furries. During June, I had an NHS worker from the UK talked about the global pandemic and how it's had an impact on England, who just so happens to be a furry. I've had brony people, so people who like My Little Pony. So like I would describe them as the sister of furries because while furries are their own independent thing, bronies like rely on a show and rely on a fandom. So the same but different. I've had that person who runs the conventions in the UK come on, who just so happens to be a furry. Lots of things like that. First makers who aren't actually furries themselves, and I've had that conversation before.
So, just out of curiosity, is somebody who is a furry better at making fursuits, or does that not follow?
It depends who it is, in all honesty. Like everyone's different, both in real life and in furry. But generally speaking, it's typically the furries who are fursuit makers because they would know characters more. Not saying that non-furries who make fursuits aren't. It depends. In all honesty, it just depends.
Yep.
Everyone's different and everyone's skills different. And I know fursuit makers who would run a mile from the fandom despite the fact that it's their income. And I know fursuit makers who are furries who hate fandom. So it's complete different scales. So yeah, I started the show in January 2020 and it blew up. It just out of nowhere. I have a very small group of friends outside the furry fandom, so the fact that I could, turn in every week and I was doing this for me. It started off because I have a history in radio and entertainment and podcasting and radio and all kind of fun stuff that like, if you put it in a barrel system, when your kids are born, like, oh, they're going to be a doctor, they're going to be a dentist. You don't really think furry podcaster is going to be up there. But, yeah, I blame my aunt for that every single time. I go, well, you happened this. Actually, side story to this, I got my name Get in the Box from my aunt who got me into Pokemon. And so in the furry fandom, the general gist you have like quote your name. So the big names of the furry fandom are Majira Strawberry, Soda-Roo, Bakari Sweat, all these like things that link together. And Ink didn't have one of those like linking things. So I needed something. And for ages, it was going to be like ink palette or, ink pen or something like artsy, right?
Or ink blot. Yeah, I get you.
Or something like that. Yeah. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And I said to my aunt, I was like, so the original plan for ink was going to be shipped down to me from Dublin to where I live. And I was like, yeah, no problem. Do the plan. And my aunt said to me very, very like offhandedly, time for ink to get in the box. And it stuck. It just stuck. Like it stuck so much that I put it on merch and the merch sold out in an hour and a half.
What,
so
really?
It stuck. Yeah. So the show first released merch, I think in April. I don't know. And that sold out in an hour and a half.
Wow.
So these are my characters. This one over here is Ink, and this one over here is oh, never mind. The lighting decided to not work. So it's got Get in the Box written at the bottom. Also, I get in the box. So when I open my intro to the show, I go, "Welcome back to Furry Trash. I'm your host, Get in the Box." And that's how that stuff.
Gotcha. So, like the same way I say, I'm Clisare on the internet, you're Get in the Box.
Yeah, I'm Getting the Box on the internet. Or, like, what I say is because I use a mix of Ace and Ink. So, generally, I'll use Ace. I'll use Ink. I don't care. Claire, I'll send you pictures of these later on. I'll probably send you the Twitter link. But the back of my bedroom studio door and the side of my wardrobe is covered top to tail, pardon the pun, in furry pictures of people wearing my merch and showing off the stickers.
Wow.
The t-shirts. There's some in Canada, there's a couple in Australia, there's even a few in France. Now, to me, that's crazy because I love France. I wanted to go to France for so long, but I haven't been able to go because, pandemic. So there's been stuff all over the world. It's mental. It's mental.
And so I presume there's a lot of people in the furry fandom, the same as yourself, who just like enjoy, being in the fursuit and being in the fandom and meeting other people like them. But like, just to talk about the elephant in the room, because people listening will want to know, like, obviously there's kind of a certain idea of furries out there.
To be honest, I wanted to avoid this, but it's fine. Ironically enough, there's like very little elephant personas, but I don't find that funny. People can't make elephant in the room jokes, but So to answer the question, yes, but very, 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 very few people are into it.
So it wouldn't be the majority of the fandom, and it would be fairly easy to avoid.
You can actively avoid it very easily. To put it the best way is, it's like trying to look for a pimple, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you actively look for one, you will find it.
You'll find one, yeah.
But if you don't look for it, you don't see it.
Yeah. No, that makes total sense. And I was only asking you because people will wonder, because obviously, but yeah, you're saying it's pretty easy to avoid. And it's not what the fandom is about. The majority of it is not involved for that reason.
There's very, very, very deep, dark, drawn lines that people are either into it and great, do your own thing, love. That's you, do you. And then people who aren't, but that's the divide. But a lot of people use it as an escapism because, the world is not great, especially right now. And it's literally just a little world to disappear after for a little bit.
So it's more in line really with, I suppose, cosplay.
Yeah, that's where it kind of
because cosplay would be considered pretty mainstream.
Yeah. So actually, the furry fandom kind of started off cosplay, specifically like sci-fi cosplay. It started in America in the 1980s, early 1990s, in a lot of side alley hustle of conventions and things. And there was this one furry, well, it wasn't really called furry because there wasn't a term at the time for it, but it was anthropomorphic, which is a big fancy word for basically they walk onto legs. So imagine Mickey Mouse and going to throw in a bit of my furry knowledge here, Nick Wilde or Kaz from Looney Tunes, all that kind of stuff. So if they anthropomorphic is anthropomorphizing animals, so some human-like characteristics and or features. So walking on two legs, acting like humans, talking like humans, not specifically English. That's another thing. A lot of people think outside the fandom that furries are only English. No, for once, I'm Irish. People speak different languages and suits. People have different comics and different characters and suits and languages and things.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Basically, it's just a bigger sister of cosplay.
So for new people who haven't listened to your podcast yet, there's no need to be afraid. Come and listen. Come and listen to the podcast. And there's lots of different people on your podcast talking about different things, all kind of related to, some of them happen to be furries, all kind of related to the topic. But yeah, it's an escapism. It's much more accessible maybe than people might think it is.
A lot of non-furry people perceive it as this deep, dark, wow, furry people. In reality, you were just a bunch of losers who can't communicate with each other. Just, it's fine. There's this phrase in the fandom where it's if you can't communicate, we're best friends. People can't talk, great. Some furries choose to silent dispute, some people don't, and that's just their own expression, that's their own thing. And it's just very much just a ragtag bunch of losers who like wearing animal costumes because people are fairy, and that's fine.
So would you like to remind everyone where to find you on the internet and find your podcast?
I feel like what I do, my rambles and my non-shut-upness, as I say. My podcast is called Furry Trash, FURRYTRASH, because we've been Americanized now and we can't say rubbish apparently. Instagram is Get in the Box and my Twitter is FTrashPod.
Thank you so much for coming on to the podcast and sharing your story. Thank you also for putting up with the technical difficulties I was having at the start. For anyone who's listening, I had a few technical difficulties, Maya, but we resolved it in the end. So thank you for your patience.
I had them myself. A 7-Up can was used as a sacrifice.
Yeah, there was a spilled 7-Up can in the process of us trying to get this podcast going.
What you don't see here is I currently have a damp towel on my lap because I spilled a whole can of 7-Up on myself. And when I had my suit on my lap, I was like, don't get the suit wet. So I hold them up a little bit.
Is there anything else you want to add that you think people might want to know or do you want them to go to your podcast to get all the answers they want?
Oh God, all the answers. Wow, tough stakes there, Claire, I have to say, considering I can barely put 2 sentences together in a good day. It's, it's like nothing you've ever seen before.
Oh, well done.
You're welcome.
So thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Thank you so much for listening and watching. Please subscribe on YouTube. Please follow us on the audio platforms. We also would love a review. If you have the time, that'd be great. Really help us out. And this podcast was brought to you by the patrons and Skillshare and Audible. Links are down in the description. Thank you so much. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.
This podcast was brought to you by The Shift. For more like this, check out theshift.ie.